Deborah Milner, welcome to SHOWstudio.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking a little bit about Isabella Blow, and you had a really exciting relationship with Izzy because you used to make a lot of pieces for her. Tell me what she used to come to you and ask for.
Well, the great thing about what I used to do with Izzy is mainly she would ask me to make things for shoots. So, I mean, that was really exciting because she'd kind of give you a brief that might be quite random or maybe just a phrase, and then ask me to produce something for a certain date. And at the time I didn't really have much money, so I'd have to kind of think, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to make something for £10. And once I made a net, I found all these pieces of net in my studio, coloured, nylon net, and made a kind of collage of the net. So it was all see-through like a Chinese lantern, and made a dress for her. Or then another occasion she'd kind of, give me some other quote, and then I'd have to make something for it. Like, I made this kind of stainless steel dress for her, which had all these kind of origami pieces sticking out. You can actually see it on my website, and that actually became a whole collection. So I think it was very collaborative in that way, that she was kind of sparking off ideas. She wasn't asking to borrow things that I already had, because I never had big collections or anything anyway due to finances. So she kind of instigated me to sort of produce certain pieces and then produce a kind of range of things after that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that the piece sparked a whole collection, because did you find that it was quite a sort of collaborative relationship in that she would spark ideas with you? It must have been very fulfilling to have someone kind of prompting you in a way.
She would, and you know that you'd have to push the boat out, because the thing is, she wouldn't say, she'd give you something, but she wouldn't say too much, but you knew that she was expecting to be amazed.
Yeah.
And then because I knew that she'd chosen pieces by other people, or so maybe got them to make things, I'd feel like I really had to pull something out of the hat and do something incredible.
Yeah.
So that was actually really good.
Really helpful.
Because, you probably pushed yourself much further than you would have done.
Yeah.
And in fact, Izzy gave me my first ever piece of press.
Oh really? Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I met her through Philip Tracy, because we were at the Royal College of Art together. So I kind of met her briefly when I was there. And then after that, Philip brought her round, and she's kind of bought some pieces and things. And then she asked me if I would make a piece for, I think it was London Portrait magazine. Alistair Thane shot it. But I ended up making this kind of layered organza dress that she'd found someone else who could hand paint it. So he'd done all the hand painting, and then we made this kind of good-like shaped dress, and Philip made a headdress, and that was the first ever press I had. And then after that, things just started rolling. Yeah, she'd get me more commissions or send me clients for wedding dresses or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really exciting. And then she gave me a room in her house as a studio. So.
Yeah, she was incredibly generous with supporting people that she thought was talented.
Yeah, she was. I mean, that was brilliant because, apart from anything else, it was great fun just being up the corridor from Philip, because we'd been at college together and good friends, and then, a year or two later, we were working in the same space, so I could pop down there, see what he was doing, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So it was really good. And obviously I got lots of commissions through that, because her friends would come round and want, some kind of dress or whatever, so she'd get me to make them for her.
So you talked a bit about working on the shoots, and I do want to ask a bit more about that, because obviously Izzy's shoots are so amazing. And one of the things that struck me at the Somerset House exhibition was how specific some of her briefs were. She'd really come up with a concept, and there's that wonderful letter in the exhibition where she talks about the exact measurements that the guillotine, that's being one of the props in a shoot, has to be. Do you remember sort of getting these briefs from her and kind of thinking, Well,
I do, but to be honest, what she would say to me would be a bit more vague, and would be more likely to be some kind of poetic phrase or a feather or something that she'd seen, so she wouldn't be as kind of definitive. I mean, she might tell you that the shoot was about, arsenic and Victoriana, and she wanted it to be kind of dark, but that might be it. Then you'd have to get on with it and try and get into what she was doing.
Yeah, gosh, that's
so
tricky.
It was quite difficult, but it was also really exciting, because you were really, exploring different areas, and I'd show her things as I went along, obviously. But
were there any favourites that you worked on with her? Any shoots that were particularly?
Well, I think that shoot, Taste of Arsenic, that she did with Sean Ellis, that's probably one of my favourite ever, because I just thought the makeup and everything was fantastic, and all the images were brilliant, and it was just so out there. I mean, I think you rarely see shoots as inventive as that.
And you used to make pieces for her as well, just
I did, but to be honest, I did make less for her than I made for kind of you know, for the shoots, mainly because I was always trying to make things for commissions to earn some money. So,
yeah, I can imagine.
but having said that, Izzy would be always very generous when I did make things for her and come round with a big wad of cash and stick it through the front door or something. So,
she's great. She was great fun, wasn't she?
She was really good fun.
Yeah.
And you know, she was always kind of up for going and sort of meeting some new people, or, you know, if we went to stay with her in Gloucestershire, she'd have a whole line of things lined up for us to do, like going to see this carpenter who ended up making the first unicorn for Philip, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
He did all this wonderful wood carving. And then on another night she'd invited the local fire brigade round to Hills because she wanted to say thank you for them because they'd saved Hills in a fire, basically. But it all ended up totally hilarious because, I mean, she made us all dress up and we had to look really smart and go down to entertain the firemen who arrived with their fire engine in their full fire gear. This is just before Christmas. And so we, you know, entertained them, and Izzy plied them with drinks and was flirting and saying to Philip and me, oh, he's nice, that one, look at that one. We were like, oh, goodness. So she was teasing us all. And then when they were trying to reverse the fire engine, it sort of rolled off the drive and got stuck kind of in a ditch, and they couldn't get out because we couldn't get past the fire engine. And the fire brigade ended up being there till about 12 at night, and they had to get another fire engine to come and tow it out. So then, you know, conversation was kind of wearing a bit thin by 9 o'clock after we'd been talking to them for 2 hours.
God, Izzy brought down all the fire brigade. That's so funny.
So it was really funny.
Yeah.
So she'd do things like that, or, you know, invite the local hunt round and totter out with a whole tray of drinks, you know, for them at sort of 11 in the morning. And, you know, she hadn't really had time to get changed, so she had a big coat on, but underneath she was in a night dress. And then I remember I think she slipped on the cobbles and dropped the whole lot of all these kind of crystal glasses of whiskey and everything.
But it must have been so nice to work with someone who sort of saw fashion in such a, and not just fashion, I guess life in such a fun, energetic way, because she wore her clothes, you know, really into tatters, didn't she? She just lived in a very sort of...
Well, I think she was just genuinely like that. That was the thing. It wasn't really put on for the cameras or put on even to impress you. And in fact, she used to, I know that sort of in latter years, she used to find it a real strain having to dress up to go to things, because she didn't really do it for that. She dressed up because she wanted to. But then everyone had these sort of expectations.
Oh, that's interesting.
But if you went round, sort of, I remember years ago, you'd go round at 9 in the morning and she'd greet you in a kimono with these glasses like that and crystals all around the edge, and, you know, while she was making tea and porridge for Detmar.
It was very authentic.
Yeah, it was totally. Yeah. It wasn't kind of, as I say, it wasn't put on at all. She's just like that. So I think that was exciting because, you know, she drew you into her world.
Let's talk a little bit about that world and her vision of what she liked clothes to look like, because one thing that I find very interesting with her is she has such a focus on silhouette, you know, and shape. It was so important to her. And as a couturier, you must have found it very exciting to work with someone who was so focused on what they wanted the shapes of the pieces to be. Was there a kind of a style that she'd frequently ask you for, or was she very experimental?
I think she was, you know, mainly very experimental, but she did like a nice waist.
Yeah,
sort of,
sure.
You know, cool, and obviously she had a beautiful décolleté, so corsets and things like that always look fantastic. Yeah. But mainly she wanted you to surprise her and to come up with something new. Yeah. But, you know, within whatever she was asking for. So.
But she did love this idea of sort of romantic clothes. Did you feel that, you know, everything had to have a story to it?
Yes, I think so. Or she would bring the story to it. If maybe you hadn't, but once she'd got it, then it would become part of the whole story and what she was thinking about at that moment. Yeah. I mean, once we were doing a show with Philip, and I think he was a bit fed up because she happened to see me first on that day, and she'd found all these amazing Victorian lace kind of, they were like handkerchiefs, I suppose, but they were absolutely beautiful, black. And so she just gave me them and said, make something out of that.
Oh, wow.
But they were really beautiful. So I think
Philip
was sad that she hadn't gone on there first on that occasion.
But she fed you both creatively then?
Yes,
you must have,
yeah, definitely. Oh. Which was, you know, that was very exciting. Yeah. And I mean, I remember when we did the show where Philip made the ship hat, when she saw it, she was just totally overcome by this hat. Yeah. And I think she desperately wanted that hat, actually. I don't think she didn't get it for a long while. I don't think she got to wear it.
Well, that's what's funny, because she often wore the clothes off the shoots. Did pieces ever go astray that she'd
Well, I think they did, yeah. Or they go back sort of not looking quite like they looked before, which was quite amusing. And also all the stories with budgets and things like that. Because I remember on the famous Russia trip where she, I think that was the one where she ended up deciding to get the Trans-Siberian Express to China, only she got on the wrong one, and it wasn't the really sort of, she thought it was going to be like the Orient Express, really, but it wasn't at all. It was like really basic, just with a samovar in the corner and some not very nice Russian food. But I remember the girl that was her assistant at the time, I said it was a complete nightmare, because they were in sort of, you know, St. Petersburg or wherever, and she'd say, they'd go to the Hermitage, and she'd slip the equivalent of £100 to the guy on the door. She said, well, they don't earn much money, no, they need it. And Alla would be trying to sort of, you know, work out where all this money had gone so she could account for it when she got back. Or she'd give the coach driver another 50 quid because he needed it, you know. And Alla was saying it was just a nightmare because she had to account for all this money disappearing.
But I guess that generosity is what underpins what made her so great.
Yes, absolutely. It's not like she spent the money on herself per se. It was just there to be used to, you know, fund or to have an interesting lifestyle or help people as well. I mean, another time, I used to have a little shop on Elizabeth Street, but I only really had it for maybe a year, and I had to leave because I didn't have any money basically to pay the rent, and Izzy got all her friends round to come and buy clothes, and within the space of an afternoon I had the money to pay the rent. So, you know, she would do things like that were practical help as well. It wasn't just sort of airy-fairy. You know, she was very hands-on. Yeah, practically, she would do something to help you. Yeah. So I think that was really fantastic as well. It wasn't just emotional help. She would actually do something. Or she'd persuade someone they had to buy something. Yeah. It's strange because I think that side of her is perhaps because she was so visual and looked so amazing. People do. You said kind of airy-fairy. I think people see her as this very sort of glamorous, exciting sort of creature, but actually there was that very sort of hands-on. Absolutely. I mean, you could see that if you went round to her house for Sunday lunch, Izzy would cook it. You know, make the roast lamb and everything, and all the mint sauce. She would make the meal. It wouldn't be somebody else making it. Okay, if you went to something at Hills and it was a dinner, maybe she'd have people in to help. But if it was just a sort of, you know, a casual lunch, then she would make it, and she was a really good cook as well. Yeah. So she was very practical like that. I remember actually when I first worked in her house, I mean, this is quite funny really, but I'd only been working there a few months, and she brought this young student round to see me. He said, oh, you must speak to Alexander because he wants to set up in fashion, and he's just finished his degree show, and I want you to give him some advice about how to set up, because I was just starting out. Yeah. So then I was supposed to give him some advice about how to set up his own business, which I always think is very amusing considering how incredibly well he did afterwards. Yeah, so it was her that introduced you to Alexander McQueen then? Yeah. Well, just when she met him, because she brought him round, because she obviously lived in the house, and brought him round to the house and then brought him in to see me. Yeah. So, but I don't think it was due to my advice, I have to say. Do you remember what had struck her so much about him? Because you've had a long working relationship with McQueen now. Well, I remember that she came back and said, oh, I've seen this fabulous student at St Martin's. All the clothes are just amazing. They're so emotional, and I've really got to have them. And I remember that she did. She bought them, and she was paying them off every month. Yeah. So was that what she liked about, I guess, whether it was your pieces or Philip's pieces or Lee's pieces? Was it that emotion? There had to be something. I think that obviously things sparked an emotion in her, or a response. I don't think it's something you can really pin down that Izzy would like this or would like that. Yeah. It was, you know, something a bit more intangible than that. Which I guess was the challenge of working with her, trying to surprise her and delight her. So that, I mean, that was really interesting. And I mean, she just carried on, obviously, because after that she did sort of help Alexander and, you know, get him clients or whatever, or get people to come round, or get people to come to the show in the same way that she did for Philip, and she did for me in a different way, because obviously I always did couture, so it wasn't, you know, you're not showing collections in the same way. But I would say well over 50% of my private clients came through Isabella, which is quite an amazing amount when you think about it. Yeah. So you think what the fashion industry would be like if she hadn't helped so many people. It's quite... Well, I know, it's true. It would be completely different. And not, as I say, not many people would be like that, really. practically doing things.
And it's
So
not many people are like that anymore either,
No.
I guess that's the thing.
even when I went to Brazil, because that's another whole story when I decided to go off and live in Brazil, and even there, Izzy managed to do something. Because when I
Really?
came back from my first trip there, which was a
Yeah.
holiday, and then decided that I want to do something different, I'm going to go and live in Brazil for a while. And it just so happened that Izzy was invited to the São Paulo Fashion Week,
Yeah.
like in the January, just when I came back. So off she went. And when she came back, she was all enthusiastic. So she said, okay, well, you have to come with me in April and I'll introduce you to everybody.
And she just did.
So I went back in April and met her in Rio, where she was they were doing a shoot, and she introduced me to this girl, Carla. And I mean, for example, Carla said to me, well, I'll help you. If you want to come and live in Brazil, you can live with me. She said, because Izzy helped me. And it turned out that she had gone back to Brazil. She did a waitressing job in LA, and she'd just gone back to Brazil to help for the shows, and she wasn't going to stay there. And she was assigned to Isabella, and Isabella wouldn't let her go. She was like, no, you've got to stay with me. You've got to take me around. Da, 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 da. And then she said to Swarovski, look, you should take this girl on. She's really good.
Yeah, really good.
And now she's like marketing director of Swarovski Brazil.
Really?
I don't know if that's her exact, title.
Yeah.
But before that, she was waitressing in LA. And obviously, Izzy chose selected the right
The right
person to introduce them to.
Yeah.
But,
it's interesting because it's not. A lot of people we've interviewed about her have said this. It wasn't just people, who were great fashion designers. It was anyone could spark her imagination.
Yeah.
Just someone she met on
Absolutely.
the street, someone she met at St Martin's.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many people who, owe a lot to her because she practically did something. I mean, Carla's got an amazing job, and it's really, okay, Carla's great, but it was down to Isabella initially saying to Swarovski, you've got to take her on, she's really good. Da, da, da.
She kind of gave people a push, didn't she, and
Yeah.
helped them. Yeah.
So no, it's really funny to think that she even managed to do something over there.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think that's that generosity, is people, that kindness, isn't it? She's
Yes.
always thinking of others.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but she always had a bit of a joke about whether I was going to do something on time, which I have actually finally managed to close the loop now, because years ago I made her sister Lavinia's wedding dress when I lived in her house. And I remember I made Lavinia late for the wedding because I did something you should never do. But, as a young designer, you don't
know.
always
Yeah.
know. And I remember Philip had made some comment about the cuff and thought I should have done it a different way. So this was bugging me all night. And my pattern cutter at the time said to me, I know what you're thinking, Deborah, don't do it. And I was thinking, well, maybe I will. And at 4 o'clock, I took the cuffs off the dress.
Did you?
And I made it half an hour late for the wedding.
But the dress benefited from it.
Izzy never forgot this. Whenever she'd sort of say to anyone, get Deborah to make something, she's fantastic, but make sure you get it. And it used to really annoy me. But, she just liked to tease me, basically.
Yeah. But are you ruthlessly on time now because of it?
Well, I am. And the funniest thing is that, so then when Lavinia's daughter, Rosie, was getting married recently, I said to Lavinia, who's Izzy's sister, I said, oh, well, look, if Rosie wants a dress, then I'll make it for her, tell her. So anyway, I did it, and it was all on time, and it was absolutely beautiful, and blah, blah, blah. And then afterwards, I didn't tell Lavinia the story before, because it's still in the back of my mind. And I was saying it to Lavinia, she said, oh, I don't remember that. And it was her wedding. She
had no idea.
It wasn't even a problem to her. And all these years I'd been thinking about this wedding.
And you felt really bad about it.
Really bad how I'd made her late. She hadn't even remembered.
So the bride's always late though, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I always tell my students now, you have to know from a design point of view, when you're making, you have to know when enough's enough and it's good enough. Yeah. And it's better to leave something that's imperfect and finish it on time than be such a perfectionist that the thing's in bits when it's meant to be delivered.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess that's quite an Izzy attitude, because it combines that real vision with that practicality.
Yeah.
That sometimes you just have to get things done.
Yeah. And I mean, Alexander's the same. From when I've obviously worked with him for a long time, and whenever I work with him on anything or worked with him on anything, what I noticed is, of course, he could be a perfectionist, but he'd never be a perfectionist at the expense of the total vision.
Oh,
it was the total vision that mattered.
Yeah.
And maybe there would be minor imperfections, but he wouldn't home in on something and insist on getting that perfect at the expense of everything else. And I think that's, quite a lesson to learn for perfectionists.
And do you think that's something that Izzy kind of inspired, or do you think?
Well, I guess she did in a way, because I mean that particular incident stayed with me and horrifies me. So I'll be the first person saying, even though I am a perfectionist, saying no, it's good enough.
It's good enough.
Finish it now,
Good.
and that's it. So I don't know if she'd want that to be her legacy to me.
What do you think she would want her legacy to be in fashion? Do you think it is just that generosity?
Gosh, I don't know. That's very hard to say. I mean, I think she would want to be recognised as a creative force and somebody who really made a difference in people's careers. I think it's a shame that she wasn't able to kind of capitalise on that financially, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think she would want that to be her legacy, and I think that the foundation that Daphne's helped set up, I think that's really fantastic, because it's giving young people an opportunity, but it's also recognising some of the stresses and strains that can come with particularly this industry.
Yeah.
So I think that she would be very happy about that. And I'm sure that she would really love the exhibition if she saw it, because it was really, it is really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's kind of got something, it's got everything in there.
And I think it's a nice celebration of both those facets, how beautiful and amazing she was visually, but also the depth of what she did.
Yes.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think she'd be really pleased.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.